Hi, the SI meteorologist Paul Dorian here on Wednesday, September 11th with an update on solar cycle 24. Well, it's kind of strange looking at the sun right now because this time period of 2013 was expected to be a period of elevated sunspot activity during the solar maximum of solar cycle 24. In fact, it appears more like a solar minimum time frame right now for this particular solar cycle, as it's very quiet on the sun. You have to look hard to find any sunspots right now. There are a couple of areas right here. There's one, a very small and inactive sunspots in this region, and a little bit of an area right here as well. Again, quite strange given the fact that this is supposed to have been a much more active time period, the solar maximum period of cycle number 24. The magnetic field is poised to flip over the next few months, which is a sign of the solar maximum that occurs in every solar cycle, and yet it's very quiet looking right now on the sun. Well, this is the better look at exactly where we stand with respect to solar cycle number 24 in terms of sunspot numbers, and we can also compare it to the previous sunspot solar cycle number 23. We had kind of a peak here, it looks like in late 2011 for the current sunspot cycle number 24. A little bit of an uptick here as well earlier this year, 2013. It's looking more and more like this time frame right here in the latter part of 2011 might actually turn out to be the peak for solar cycle number 24. There is a theory out there that there could be a double peak, a sudden spike around this time frame, latter part of 2013 into the early part of 2014. That certainly has not shown itself yet, as it's been again very quiet, not only now but really for the last several weeks with respect to solar cycle number 24. Now this is continuing a trend of weaker and weaker sunspot cycles. You can see here how this particular sunspot cycle number 24 is considerably weaker with fewer sunspot numbers than the prior solar cycle number 23. 23 was weaker than 22. This again continues a trend. Some solar scientists are already predicting that the next solar cycle number 25 will be weaker than the current one, and there certainly are some studies out there that suggest a weaker and weaker and longer solar cycles tend to have an effect, a negative effect, a cooling effect on global temperatures, and we'll of course continue to monitor that over the weeks and months to come. Well, here's a real long-range look at monthly sunspot numbers associated with prior solar cycles going back many decades. Here we are right here in solar cycle number 24, and this is on pace to be the weaker solar cycle than this one right here, solar cycle 14, which actually had a solar maximum in the year in February of 1906. Again, this particular solar cycle number 24 is on pace to be the weakest solar cycle in over 100 years, and it continues this weaker and weaker trend. Right here we see a longer range look and see how solar cycle 22 was followed by a weaker solar cycle 23, which has been followed by an even weaker solar cycle 24. And again, there are some solar scientists predicting an even weaker next solar cycle number 25, and this all could have an effect on global temperatures, and we'll continue to monitor that. Let's now look way back into the past at some long-term minimum type periods. Well, indeed, if we go back about 400 years looking at sunspots, we can see a couple of periods that are known for their minimal sunspot activity for decades at a time. Way back in the middle and latter part of the 1600s into the early 1700s, we had a period called Maunder Minimum where there were very few sunspots for 50 or 60 years. That was a very cold period globally. Another minimum period, the Dalton Minimum period in the cold 1800s. This was another period with minimal sunspot activity for decades at a time, and this part of the 1800s was cold globally indeed. So again, we are in a weaker and weaker phase here with respect to sunspot cycles, and we'll continue to monitor this over the next several months to come here at the SIweather.com. That's it for now. For the SI, I'm meteorologist Paul Dorian.